Get out the streamers and party hats and welcome to a new edition of the Gridiron Review. Hi, everybody. Pete Medhurst along with Bill Wagner, Bob Hoke from the Capitol joining us this week as well as we talk about our high school segment right off the top here. And Bob, private schools got going this weekend. Certainly, as we well know, on the recruiting trail now in high schools, big battles that go on between St. Mary's and AACS. And this game had a little bit of everything. But as we talk constantly, and we'll talk about it in our public school preview in a minute as they get going this coming week, continuity. So important for schools. St. Mary's football program has been one that has been anything but a team of continuity. But what a way for them to start the season and really sending a message within that B conference that, hey, you know, we think we've got something here. And Patrick Hines just tremendous Friday night against AACS. Well,
you're right. And, let's see what happens the next couple of weeks. If you remember last year, they started off with a victory, went 1-0, and then, lost their next 8 games before somewhat salvaging the season with a victory over Severn. But, I like what they did. They hired from within. We saw the lacrosse program do that a few weeks ago with Victor Lilly. So they hired from within. Jason Boudroni's been with the program for 4 years. This is his 4th year. He played Division I football, so he knows what he's doing. He knows the program. Let's face it, that's a team, AACS, that's a team that they should beat. Right. That's a C conference team. They're going to win their games in the C conference. So St. Mary's really needed to win this game. That being said, it was a 27-12 game. Midway through the third quarter, still, within striking distance, but 3 straight scores put the game away. And I don't know what it is about, Patrick Hines, but the last 2 times I've seen him, now he has 6 touchdowns and 450-plus yards. So I think he likes running at St. Mary's.
Well, we were talking about this week, Bob, about a lot of the top running backs in the county graduated, and other than Larry Barnes at Arundel, we had not a lot of name guys out there. We're sure Old Mill will come up with somebody who's going to be a 1,000-yard rusher. But is Hines in that discussion? Is he a guy that's a big-time all-county type back? Oh,
I think we'll have to wait and see. He could have been, last year, but, when you're going against, the likes of Donovan Franklin and Larry Barnes. I looked at our all-county team, last week on offense, and we only have 2 returning offensive guys from the all-county team. Larry Barnes and Chris Walker, the kicker from Old Mill. So, let's wait and see. He had a pretty decent season last year. Hines did. He's a good runner. What I liked on his touchdowns the other night, a couple of them, he broke a couple tackles. It wasn't just, he has speed, got to the outside, he broke some tackles, got into the end zone. So let's kind of wait maybe a couple weeks and see, especially once he goes up against teams like, John Carroll, Archbishop Curley in the B Conference.
Spalding with a big win over St. Mary's Riken, a team under Jerry Franks that has really built itself up nicely over the past couple of seasons, as Jerry's been a guy down in Calvert, St. Mary's counties, Charles County. He's been able to bring in some talent down there, but that's a nice win for Kyle Schmidt's team to start the year.
Yeah, and anytime, you have, rough seasons like we saw with St. Mary's last year, with Archbishop Spalding, also with Severn, anything you can do with that first week to get a win, it just really makes a difference, I think, as far as confidence. I think they were waiting. I saw one of the quotes in the paper. They were kind of waiting all summer, for this game. And that's a pretty, like you said, that's a pretty good team that they put 45 points on the other night. So, the one win to start the season, it doesn't mean that they're going to be 8-2. I mean, they have some, big-time challenges in the A Conference, but they should have some confidence, going into their game this week.
And Severn also got a win this week. Is that correct? They opened with a win?
Yeah, they got a big victory. I think it was 60-7. Maryland Christian, which is if I understand it correctly, it's not an actual school. There is no building. It's a home school, so kids that are homeschooled in that area, in the Bel Air area, can play for this team. I did a little bit of research on them. I thought they were somewhat decent, but I don't know if the caliber of competition they've played the last few years. And Severn's a team, I hear they're kind of thin. So, for them to start off with a victory, because they might have their challenges as well in the B Conference.
On a guy we've talked about on our show a lot, Pete, Tyler Perriton, a good two-way player for them, a running back, and also plays on the other side of the ball.
And he's another guy that's going to have an opportunity. Let's with the Spalding angle in that A Conference, an interesting change with Rich Holzer from Meade taking over at Mount St. Joe. I think that it adds an interesting dynamic. They, of course, this weekend, you weren't at Meade, you weren't going to be able to go play a game in the state of Ohio and get on the bus like they were heading out to Youngstown. But what a dynamic bringing a guy like Rich to Mount St. Joe, who certainly has his tentacles here in Anne Arundel County. I think we talk about just the schools in Anne Arundel County that are private schools who have a lot of trouble getting numbers per se for their schools. I think adding a guy like Rich, who's going to be able to reach down here into western Anne Arundel County, and people are going to be familiar with him. I wonder what that dynamic is going to be like now with Spalding in some of those recruiting battles.
Well, and they already have. I think they have 7 or 8 players from the county on their team already. Rich lives in Crofton.
Yeah.
And I saw him a few weeks ago. They scrimmaged St. Mary's. I kind of joked. I said, hey, you're going to go, hang around some of the fields this weekend. He said, I'm going to be out there watching the Crofton Cardinals. So I don't know, South River or Arundel, wherever, Crofton feeds into.
Gort, yep, he'll be over there.
Yes, I know he's excited. That's a good, good opportunity for him. But yeah, I can envision more county players on that team in the next couple of years.
I was going to say, it's going to make for, I think, some great battles, not only on the field, but off the field. Let's turn our attention to, obviously, the public school season, which begins this week. We know year in and year out who we think the main players are going to be, the Arundels, the Meads, the Old Mills, the Broadnecks. Is there a team from off the radar? Is there momentum from Glen Burnie that we saw last year? It's finally looking to, have some strides of positivity within that program. Is there somebody coming out of those other 7 or 8 teams this year that could challenge that hierarchy at the top in the public school programs?
That's a question I think we've had the last couple of years. You look at a team like Glen Burnie, 5-5 last year. They have their starting quarterback back. They have their top 2 running backs back from last year. I don't know. Last year I thought they were heading toward a winning season. They went and lost by, I think, 30 points to South River in week 9.
Right.
And that was that hurt them.
So I'm not sure if they're the team just yet. I hear rumblings, Annapolis, and they have a lot of talent on defense. I keep hearing about this freshman quarterback they have. I don't know if Coach Nick Goodmalloy's maybe keeping a little bit quiet about him for now, or you hear things throughout the county as you talk to people. But I heard a lot of people when you ask, we ask that same question of coaches. Hey, who do you think? And the team, the name Annapolis keeps coming up. I think they've improved every year under Nick Goodmalloy. They were 1-9 3 or 4 years ago.
He's done a good job. And the continuity, as you mentioned, and the same with Glen Burnie. That's what all of those schools needed. They needed a coach to come and stick around for a little while. A la Chesapeake with Coach Elliott over there, who has done a great job just by being there and getting, as you've mentioned many times on this show, getting into the youth program, working with the youth program. It's very important.
Yeah, what's funny about what's funny about Chesapeake? You mentioned Chesapeake. They've dropped down to 3A, so they're in the 3A East region.
That's notable.
And I talked to Rob Elliott the other day, and he said, "Look, nothing changes for us. We think we need to get 6 or 7 wins." Well, last year in week 9, there were 3 or 4 3-5 teams that were still in playoff contention in the Class 4A East region. So they've been a perennial 5-5, 4-6, 6-4 team the last 3 or 4 years. They can just get one other win, beat somebody else to maybe go 6-4 or 7-3. They could be in the thick of things for the playoff hunt. Whereas you say in the 4A East region, you're looking at least 7, most likely 8. North Point's very strong again.
You could conceivably miss the playoffs sometimes with 8 wins in the 4A East. Really, that's how tough that group has been, especially with North Point, not really having significant challenges, in their conference. It's not a very deep conference, but they seemingly are able to get to 7 or 8 wins all the time. The good thing for the Anne Arundel County teams is, though, if you get 8 wins, you're doing it against 4As. Right. They're doing it against predominantly 3As and 2As, so you're going to win the points battle. Speaking of continuity, where does Meade go now as Rich Holzer leaves the program? And now here they are with another coach again.
Right, you can, under Holzer they were running more of I think he ran the pistol he got from, Texas Tech. They wanted to score, 30, 40 points a game. Well, now bringing in Albert Jones, they want to run basically a pro-style smash mouth. Let's run the ball a couple times, throw when we have to. So, very different style of offense. And, speaking of offense, talking about, we've been talking about Arundel, and I keep hearing from people.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they're going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball this year. I talked to Kathy Dunn from the Baltimore Sun, and she said, she talked to Chuck Markowitz, and he said, I'm studying Auburn's playbook. Well, I went out and talked to him this week.
Yeah, he's suddenly backtracking, isn't he?
As I was getting that question out, hey, Coach, I hear you guys are going to run the ball. No. He cut me right off. He said, we are still a pass-first team. we want to run the ball when we want to run the ball.
Right.
So if we have to run the ball, but they're still looking to pass.
But Larry Barnes,
Right, they got a guy that
why not?
rushed for 1,500 yards last year. You should run him.
I mean, but they're one of those rare teams that runs off of the pass
Right.
because you've got the field spread out trying to
looking for a
defend,
pass.
their passing game, and yet here they've got wide open running lanes for a guy like Larry Barnes, who, I mean, let's face it, you go back to when Chuck won at North County.
Oh, he had great running backs.
Topper Ellis,
Exactly, yeah.
who could run for a mile.
And Frank Brown, I
Yeah.
mean, he had guys, he
No
had
question.
several big-time runners.
Yes.
Well, Bob, you met Larry Barnes is one guy we all know. Are you hearing of some other names, either offense or defense, of some players that are up and coming? There was a story about Emmett Davis is going to be the new quarterback at Broadneck. Heard he's a really good athlete. Any other names you're hearing out there around the county of guys that could be up and coming players? I mean, who's Old Mill's running back going to be? He's going to be good, I'm sure.
It's one of the, forgive me on the first name, but it's one of the Boons. I know they had a couple Boons.
Pete Boone was
Pete
one
Boone.
guy. He's a big fullback guy, like
Exactly.
240, right?
But talking about Old Mill, look out for Kamari Wilkerson.
Okay.
He's an excellent athlete. I saw him over the summer. Some summer league basketball games. He could have a big year. I think Emmett Davis could have a big year at Broadneck. I mean, here's a kid who has hardly played the last couple of years on the varsity level. He's already getting looks from colleges. He goes to those camps, those combines. Excellent athlete. He knows the offense. They're not changing. 3 or 4 years ago, Rob Harris changed the offense to fit Kanan Gabley.
Right.
Now that Gabley's graduated,
Right.
now that he's graduated, they're basically sticking with the same offense. Chris Watts, I know Harris is very big on him. He's a slot receiver, maybe even a wide receiver, but he's very speedy.
Niamatalolo, we shouldn't forget, head coach Ken Niamatalolo's son, and there's rumors that he might play offense.
I've heard a few things. I don't know if that's true or not. Nothing's been confirmed.
Big-time linebacker.
Yeah. So I think he's an excellent athlete. He basically him and Emmett Davis run the 40 in about the same time. So here's a middle linebacker running the 40 in the same time as a quarterback.
Niamatalolo, he's going to be a Division I recruit, probably.
Oh, he's got at least 8 offers according to Harris. I hear Boise State's in the mix, Buffalo. I know he went down and talked to Maryland over the summer. I don't know if he would get anything, right away from Maryland. Meade breaking. A lot of teams are breaking in new quarterbacks and new talent. Meade's breaking in a new quarterback. Bree Hart was there, just for the 1 year. Jerry Washington's going to be their quarterback. Jeremy Washington, rather, not the basketball player. Jeremy Washington.
Not to put you on the spot, do we know who the Rundle quarterback's going to be? It's going to be a new quarterback there.
It's Dante Thompson, who was Anthony Messenger's backup the last couple years. Okay. Saw some time, in some games that were blowout games. I saw him at practice the other day. He looks like a pretty good athlete, decent passer. So who knows, what kind of dynamic he adds. It could be an extension of the running game. Seems a little bit more mobile than the others, so we'll have to kind of wait and see there.
I saw our guy Russ Myers from Southern, and by the way, let's talk about that. This is something you mentioned to me. Russ Myers, 20 years at Southern, correct?
Yeah, he's going into his 21st year.
Chuck Markowitz is a million years. He's been in Anne Arundel County. He coached at Meade, North County, a year at Chesapeake, now Arundel. I think he's, 30-some years, Bob?
I think this might be his, overall, I think this might be his 30th. It's 16th, I believe, at Arundel, and 30th or 31st overall.
But beyond that, tell us what's the interesting thing beyond those two.
Yeah, I don't know if we have another coach in the county, another head coach in the county who's been there more than 5 years.
Right. You're talking about Rob Harris at Broadneck and
Chad
McCormick's entering his
yeah.
5th or 6th year. I think Nick Goodmalloy at Annapolis. I mean, this is at one school. I think he's in his 4th year. Rob Elliott in his, I want to say, 5th year. But
you have to go back literally. Southern has only had 2 coaches since the mid-'70s.
Buck Gardner
and Russ.
Well, it used to be that all the coaches in Anne Arundel County have been at their schools 10, 11, 12 years. We're just starting to see quite a high turnover in the high schools. I'm not quite sure what the reason.
And obviously you get to write about the games, and obviously being a parent of athletes, Bill, you've been a parent of athletes. We know there are parental units within our cluster who have become nightmares
influences,
for athletic directors, principals, and coaches. And coaches in every meeting, they will tell you in those meetings they have at the beginning of the season, hey, if your child has a problem with me, have your child address it directly to me. And those children don't do that.
Right.
They do it with their parents. Their parents
go to the administrator.
Bypass the coach and go to the principal and the athletic director.
And we get a lot of times, if you don't have a strong AD or a strong principal in terms of athletics, and we know this happens, those people don't want conflict.
Right.
And their
They'll give
solution
in.
is, okay, if this coach is, ticking off this one parent, let's just fire the coach. Let's change the coach. And that, unfortunately, is a mindset that happens, I think, way too much in high school athletics.
And Bob knows is that a lot of coaches are leaving on their own volition because of this
Sure.
problem. They're not even, they're sick and tired of all the parental interference, if you will, and they're just saying, you know what?
And 90% of the
football's not fun
time,
anymore.
90% of the time, it's always from a parent of a coach whose kid, unfortunately, is not a very
Middle
good
of the
player.
road, yeah.
They're middle of the road player, not a very good player, who doesn't get a lot of playing time. And they're the ones who have the loudest voice in terms of pressing things with the parents. And I think that's an area that also, I think you can't do it because the educational budget won't allow you, but you almost need a full-time athletic director who just handles all of that stuff for each and every school. One of the great things over the past few years, and you both know how, because Bob, you write the high school column, Bill writes the college column. The amount of young people we're seeing now using football from Anne Arundel County to further their education.
Absolutely.
More than ever.
Kids like Damon Brown's going to start at Navy this year as a running back. Noah Fitzgerald from Old Mill is going to go play at Fordham. A guy like R.J. Harris, who's literally right now with the New Orleans Saints in their camp.
And Josh Furman was with the Broncos.
Yeah. I mean,
and I have to say, Mike Minter, who was the Al Larimore Award winner as the top lineman in Anne Arundel County, he was a walk-on at Maryland. He is starting right now.
Wow.
He is a starting guard for University of Maryland.
It's really been fun to watch these kids, even a kid like Alec Rudin, who we're familiar with, who's going to be at Bryant this year on the 1AA level. It's fun to see these young people using football as a vehicle to get to college and better themselves. Because let's face it, through the years, we've seen an awful lot of young people who play at the high school level, and that's pretty much where it stops. And now we're seeing more kids, more than ever, use it as a great vehicle. And I know for you guys especially, it's fun to follow those kids and to see how far they actually can take it, especially when we see a guy like, R.J. Harris, A.J. Francis, Brandon Albert, who are on the same team, ironically.
Look at week one, Dolphins at the Redskins. We're going to have A.J. Francis and Brandon Albert in that game. Same team.
On the same team. And that's it. And all of us that know A.J., he's got a future in our business when it's all over with, because he's got such an amazing personality, such a great business wit about him as well. Public school-wise, when all the chips are down in week 9 and week 10, are we still looking at the same 3 or 4 teams? Or does Annapolis, do you feel strongly enough that Annapolis makes that breakthrough into that group that has really been dominated by Arundel, Old Mill, and obviously Meade over the last couple of years, with Broadneck last year even coming into it?
We might go a long way to finding that out this week when Annapolis plays Meade. But then let's see how they do against an Arundel or a Broadneck. Give you an idea as to what some other people around the county think. When I talked to Markowitz the other day, now he's great at giving us woe is me, and these other guys are great. And he said, I tell you what,
Lou Holtz won a lot of games doing that, so Chuck's done the same thing.
Chuck said, I tell you what, you line up the Old Mill against the Baltimore Ravens, that's a pretty good game. They're that good. That's what he said. I said, wow, really? Okay, but I think they have a veteran offensive line. They have their quarterback returning, David Morocco. They have Kamari Wilkerson. A lot of talent on defense. I think. Around the county,
and Chris Walker's a huge weapon in special teams. Let's face it.
4 field goals in the playoff game.
Yes, he can win you games.
Yes.
So I think Old Mill. I think until somebody can knock them off, they've won 8 games in a row in the regular season. They are the longest. Outside of Broadneck, of course. I would have to say Old Mill, and maybe Arundel, Broadneck fight it out, and then I'm hearing North Point is really good. So we might be looking at just 3 teams. But I think Annapolis is the kind of popular pick to maybe jump up there. Maybe Meade. You take out Chesapeake since they're now to 3A, so it's interesting to see what they do at that level. Don't really know yet. I don't know if I'm ready to say Glen Burnie. South River, they were 2-8 last year. They have a lot of talent back, but they have a lot of talent back from a 2-8 team. So let's see. Eddie Dolch didn't have a full offseason last year. He got the job in June or July. So now he's had a full offseason. Let's see what that does. Severna Park, moving to the triple option under Will Bell. So let's see what kind of changes. If that helps Severna Park. Excuse me. And until somebody does it though, I would have to say Old Mill. Put Old Mill at the top maybe. Arundel and Broadneck. Let them fight it out 2 and 3 and see what happens with North Point. But we should be looking at at least 2, at least maybe the top 2. Unless North Point was to go 10-0, we might be looking at the top 2 seeds from the 4A East region coming out of the county again.
Right. Lastly, Bob, obviously, I'm glad to say that there are no blockbuster games in the first week. I hated when Broadneck played Old Mill and Arundel played Meade in the first week. But what are we looking to cover? Have you already made a decision about what games are kind of the good public school games this Friday night?
Yeah, it looks like I think we'll cover the Annapolis Meade game.
Okay, because that'll be interesting to see if Annapolis is what people
Exactly. I was trying to look at a secondary game. I don't know that we'll get out to more than one this week, but I think that South River Broadneck can be interesting. I thought Old Mill, hey, they're the team that was the last team left standing last year. They're playing Severna Parks. That could be an interesting game. Outside of that, though, a lot of the Chesapeake's, Northeast, Southern, they're playing out of county teams. So there's a lot of games this weekend involving county teams because they're not all playing each other. But it looks like Annapolis Meade looks like the best game. So that being said, it's going to be 45-10.
You say Southern's going all the way up to Cecil County and play Rising Sun in the opener coming up next Friday.
Better call us from the bus on that.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, because that's a 7 o'clock kickoff too,
yes.
so that means the game's going to end even later. But see, he runs the ball every play, so it's going to make the clock go all the time. Bob, appreciate you as always stopping by. Look forward to having you back as the season goes on.
Anytime.
All right, Bob Hoke joining us here from the Capital newspaper. Coming up, we'll take a look at the youth scene. Youth football got kicked off this weekend, and some terrific games in the 12 and under cluster that we'll tell you about, and look forward to this youth season. Bill and I will also come back and talk about the Ravens and the Redskins. What a debacle it was for once for the purple and gold, burgundy and gold. Number one, at least for one preseason weekend. We're back with more after this on the Gridiron Review. And welcome back to the Gridiron Review. We had a chance to get out and watch some good youth football this week. In fact, I had a chance to watch it in 2 different counties, especially with Southern High's main feeder program now basically coming out of Calvert County. Went down and watched some action down there. In Anne Arundel County, all the off-season transfers are in uniform and ready to go, as this was seemingly the year of the transfer bill. In youth football, it's even now trickled down to that level. It's not just on college level anymore. Some good games in the 12 and under bracket. Brooklyn Park beating Cape in the American by a score of 6-0. Old Mill over the Panthers, 14-zip. 12 national. Great game between Pal and the Rebels by a score of 13-12, with Pal taking the title there. Pal has had some interesting teams, and as we talked with Bob Hoke earlier, Annapolis High should end up eventually getting some better results, even though some of those Pal kids have allegedly gone on to some private schools. Getting that feeder program, what it's had in the 12 and 13 under the last couple of years, Nick Goodmalloy may finally start to see some of the fruits of the labor. And let's face it, for any high school to be reasonably decent, you need somebody at the youth level. Doesn't matter if you're in the American Division or National Division. It's one of the most misguided arguments I ever see on the youth football message boards. But, for a guy like Nick Goodmalloy, that PAL program has to be huge in terms of at least introducing football for guys growing up through the level, because at Annapolis, they do expect to win more than one game a year.
Right. Well, and there's been a lot of good leadership with the PAL program. Richie Pettibone came in and did some coaching and showed some leadership. Our old friend Joe Parker, that played at Arundel and Colgate, is coaching over there.
And former Panther Greg Gully, who is now the commissioner for Annapolis. Sure.
Great guy, top-notch individual, and so they're getting good leadership. They've strengthened the program. I think it's also important that they eliminated some of these other programs that, like the Annapolis Boys and Girls Club try to do a program, and I think it'd be better for Annapolis if there was one solid, strong program, a la Gambrels Odenton, which is feeding Arundel. I think that helps when you have one solid program that you can work with, as opposed to having kids split up amongst all sorts of different, smaller programs.
The one fascinating thing to me is this constant argument about, whether you're American Division, whether you're National Division, whether you're Central Division. Eventually, this has to just be a 2-division thing. I memean, I'm watching these games down in Calvert County the other day. You're either in the senior division or you're in the junior division. We're not worried about this American, National, Central. I mean, people have really harped on Cape for years because Cape has played, quote, in the National Division. Mm-hmm. Well, the last time I checked, Broadneck High School hasn't had a lot of trouble winning games because Cape has been playing, quote, in a Division II or national feeder program. So I think it's one of the most misguided arguments out there. Basically, youth football is to put a uniform on a kid, teach him, introduce him to blocking, tackling.
The fundamentals.
Yes, because guess what, youth football coach? Everything you've done for the last 5 years, that high school coach is going to undo and reteach when they get to the high school level. I hate to break it to you, but that's exactly what's going to happen. But no, there's no question. You talk to Chuck Markowitz, and he'll tell you the value of having kids out of that Gork program for years feeding into Arundel, and they've had a lot of success with that Gork program, and obviously Arundel has had some success, and it's been interesting. I think Old Mill is probably the most interesting high school team because they literally have feeders within their system, like 4 or 5 different feeder programs that send kids.
We
to
had
Old
kids
Mill.
from Gork that would go to Old Mill.
Yeah.
They would come over from the Millersville area to play for Gork because it was a solid program, and then they'd end up at Old Mill. But, back to your point, when I was coaching youth lacrosse at Cambrils Odenton, and I have to say, I knew a coach who knew his record over a 5-year span. And I had to say to him, it doesn't matter how many games you win at the youth level. It doesn't matter about championships. Is winning nice? Yes. It's nice for the kids to see some reward for hard work. But I would say this was my mantra. Our job is to give these kids a chance to make their high school team. Yeah. That's what we're here to do, to give them enough tools, fundamentals, and learning how to compete, learning how to practice, etc., so that when they get to the high school level, they at least have a chance to make the team. That's all we're here for.
Especially with the bigger schools, because the bigger schools, you get so many kids that are trying out for sports.
I don't want to catch you off guard here, and I know that you're not work full-time for Recreation and Parks, but I've received an email this summer from a longtime coach who says Anne Arundel County won't let a coach coach his kid anymore.
That's incorrect.
Can you enlighten us on what's going on? Because I think maybe they're saying something about if they're worried that if a kid transfer.
Here's what happens. And one of the main trails of issue this year was a coach who has taken his kid to now 3 different organizations in the last 3 years. So let's get all the details. Right, let's get all the details in the pot and boil it up here and have a meal and talk about it. But what happens is Johnny doesn't get to play quarterback over at this organization because guess what? The quarterback over there is better.
Right.
So Dad takes Johnny to a different organization, may not be as strong, so all right, I know Johnny's going to be able to play quarterback over there. Well, Johnny goes over there, but then you realize you're driving maybe from Edgewater or Annapolis all the way up, to the northern part of the county every night. So you say to yourself, hey, I don't know if I want to be able to do that. Now you then leave that organization, drive down to another one in the central part of the area. Right. So now you've been with 3 different organizations in 3 years, and because you make friends with some people in that organization, some of those players follow you, like the Partridge family, right on down to that next organization.
And that's what you don't want to have.
So that's what's happening. You've got people that have essentially recruited players from one organization. They'll follow a coach to the next one. All the rule states is, in other words, say you're the coach of the 70-pound team this year, okay? And unless you actually physically move to a house in a different area, you could not coach the 80-pound team at your new organization the next year.
You have to take a year off, right?
No, well, you either have to take a year off or coach a different team. Just go be a coach for the 90, the 100.
They don't want you to take all your 70-pound kids over to the other organization and play.
That's all it is. That's all the protection
is in place there. And that's not necessarily that's something, what people don't realize is, and this is where I think Parks and Recreation gets an unfair part of the criticism, just like soccer runs itself almost in Anne Arundel County because the AAYSL runs it flawlessly. Lacrosse this year came up with their own version of the AAYSL. They ran nearly a flawless on their own type program where we give them scheduling assistance and officials and all of that stuff.
Space, et cetera.
Now, the same thing occurs with AAYFA. The football board and the football people are supposed to be able to run this themselves.
Right.
But there
You
are
shouldn't have to be
some
policing
people,
it. Right.
there are some people that make it so difficult that you almost have to legislate something every year. The problem is there is a reaction to something that occurs every year because one team doesn't have a great year, one organization doesn't have a great year, so everybody says, oh, that team shouldn't be that bad, or that coach took 6 guys over to a different organization. So what happens is because so many people have lost touch with reality in youth football that it's almost as if they have to legislate something every year instead of allowing the program to just run itself. Right. And it's just like I brought up the Calvert County model. I'm down there watching those kids. There's only 2 divisions there. You're either in the senior division, you're in the junior division. And it works flawlessly in terms of scheduling And for each organization, say you got 40 kids that come out for a certain weight class. You got 20, 19 that are, have an understanding of what they're doing, and the other kids are maybe first-year players. Great. The 19 or 20, they're playing in the senior division. The other first-year kids are all playing on that junior division team, so they're not playing against guys. What we have now is a hodgepodge of people. The youth football message board is amazing. I mean, you've got people, no, I'm serious. You've got people that literally are challenging the manhood of adults who are volunteering to coach 11 and 12-year-old kids who may not, let's face it, I could have 40 kids in my neighborhood. But Bill, you live in Odenton. Mm-hmm. You could have 18 players on your team. Now, just because I have 40 kids that show up in uniform for me, it doesn't matter how well I coach them. If your 18 players are better than my 40, right, it doesn't matter whether we're playing D1, D2, whether you got 18 or I got 40. Right. That's a reality of the situation. And we get so many people that get reactionary to what happens, and we've just lost sight of reality as to what it is. I mean, the whole discussion with James Harrison, you should have seen some of the reactions from some of the people that coach football in this county. It was mind-boggling to me as a person. My kids got those trophies that you talk about growing up and everything like that, and they won a lot of games playing for Shadyside when I was coaching them and everything like that, but they also got those trophies for participation. Well, both of them ended up being college basketball players, so I don't think the participation trophies hurt them in terms of
their parent to make them understand what it means. It doesn't mean you were the champion.
That is exactly right. It's not about the coach who's willing to say, for example, from Gork, because I know this is a real example from years ago, it's not about a coach from Gork in coaching in Odenton driving all the way to Shadyside to pick up two guys to bring them up to Gork to play. Eventually, though, it was a smart decision from a football GM standpoint because the one kid's killing it for Bowling Green as an all-conference player right now, and the other one played terrific football at Maine. But that's what was happening. That's where people are, and that's why all these rules eventually had to be legislated, and it just becomes, we've had, at the end of last year, we had to suspend a mom for 2 years because she came on the field and was squirting water at a referee and went over and another woman attacked a coach on another team. And things of that nature. Moms. So, that's where we are in this youth football culture. And unfortunately, and I harp on it every week, I wish I could put up a graphic every week about the people who get thrown out of youth football games. Right. And you know what? Here's the thing. Here's what the coach always says. We've had problems with this referee before, and he cheats against us and things of that nature. Well, guess what? Here's how you don't get thrown out by that referee. Don't give him a chance to throw you out. Just coach your team. If you know that guy gives you a problem, just go on and play the game and teach your kids how to play. Because as they will all tell you, they are all Bill Belichick's on that level in youth football. Coming up, Redskins, Ravens, for once, the burgundy and gold. For once, the burgundy and gold. We'll talk about that when we come back on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back. Redskins, Ravens, preseason game number 3 for both. Both teams' first-team offense sputtered in week 2. Redskins gave up some turnovers, put the Ravens in sudden change offense. And Joe Flacco and company, Bill, did okay, but I still think when John Harbaugh goes back and looks at the film of that, he will want them to have done better because they could have had 21 points in the blink of an eye. Instead, they were only up 13-0, and as we saw quickly 2 scores later, they were down 14-13 by halftime.
I never know what to make of preseason football. I look at the big picture. The Ravens have some issues. Their offensive line has been decimated by injuries, so there's not been the continuity. That's supposed to be a strength of the team. They don't have a number 2 wide receiver. They drafted Brashad Perriman to be the number 2 to replace
One
Torrey
practice
Smith.
so far.
One practice. Unbelievable. I've never
make it through that one.
John Harbaugh said that he was only going to be out for a week at most, and he's missed the entire preseason. Any chance that he's going to be an impact player, at least for half a season, is gone because he's had no time to bond with Flacco, develop chemistry. He can't be in football shape. So write him off. So now the Ravens are looking at Kamar Aiken as their number 2 receiver next to Steve Smith. And Steve Smith's great. He's going to have an outstanding season. But he's, 38 years old? Yeah. I mean, you got to worry about him wearing down over the course of the season. So I think the Ravens have some issues. And clearly, the Baltimore Ravens reserve defenders are not very good. Because what happened against the Redskins has been a theme the entire preseason. As soon as those backup defenders come on the field, it's all bets are off.
Yeah, I agree with that. And based on what Washington was able to do, as someone who has been a lifelong fan of the Burgundy and Gold, I can tell you, outside of perhaps the week that Sean Taylor died and the Raiders beat us in Super Bowl 18, this was probably the worst week in franchise history with the soap opera that went on between, neurologists and RG3 taking all the work, and then all of a sudden come Friday, he can't play.
Not only can he not play in the preseason game, he may not be able to play for 2 weeks or so.
Which makes me believe that the neurologist found something in those scans and everything that alarmed him, because you don't all of a sudden do that without seeing something that alarms you as a doctor, unless the team has said, hey, dude, here's $500. Could you just say he can't play?
Redskins have used this alleged concussion, we don't even know if it's really a concussion, to push RG out the door so that either Kirk Cousins is going to start the opener. Is that what's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, look, you cannot argue, though, that the offense plays at a different tempo and looks completely different. And then the fan out there, they run different plays. No, they run the same plays. It's just the other two guys know how to execute it. I mean, Kirk Cousins had a great third down play where he looked 1, he looked 2, and finally completed the route to his third guy and got a first down on 3rd and 5.
Supposed to be doing in the NFL.
The same play that Robert got hurt on last week, or allegedly got hurt on, where he fumbled the ball and everything, Kirk looks 1, looks 2. The running back is right here in the middle.
Right.
Okay, let me check it down and throw it right to him. Robert had the same opportunity. Chris Thompson standing there wide open. He never threw him the ball, takes the abuse, takes the hit, fumbles the football away. It's the same plays. They're just being executed better. Yes, it helped to have Trent Williams in there last night, but, you had Kirk and McCoy both standing in there in the pocket with guys bearing down on. One time, Suggs is like right here in Kirk Cousins' grill, and he's like, okay, boom. Get it out of there.
Well, and what I'd like to see the Redskins do is maybe can we remember that Alfred Morris was a 1,500-yard rushing
Yeah, and they're
back?
going to do that.
I mean, last year they went away from Alfred Morris. Hear good things about the kid out of Florida.
Matt Jones, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
and Trey Williams, the third guy out of Texas A&M, has been
let's
stellar.
Take the pressure off these quarterbacks, whoever it may end up being under center, and run the ball, because hearing that the Redskins' defense is improved.
It is, but I mean, even they've given up
Losing
some
Jimmy
yards.
Collette hurt.
That's terrible, and they haven't played Kerrigan all preseason, and they're good. They gave up some yards and some plays to the first team offenses they saw in the first 2 games. But remember, they're dealing with a decimated secondary, guys that aren't quite healthy, or quite frankly that good. In the case of a guy like David Amerson, who Steve Smith burned not once but twice before he got thrown out of the game last night. So I think both teams. The interesting thing is I think Joe Flacco and Mark Trestman already seem to be at least on the same page. So imagine Joe Flacco. Here's a guy that's had a different offensive coordinator seemingly all the time in his career, and all he does is make the playoffs. All he does is win football games, make playoffs, and that's the ultimate.
Very consistent.
That's the ultimate
people
goal.
who criticize Flacco they don't want to see the alternative, because we were talking about this last night. Some of the quarterbacks that have played for the Ravens, it's almost hilarious.
Yeah.
Stoney Case.
Testaverde.
Scott Mitchell.
Mitchell.
Flacco is a breath of fresh air. He shows up every week and does his job.
Scott Mitchell looked like the Goodyear blimp by the time he got to Baltimore. Obviously, 2 quarterbacks on the college level in 2 totally different realms. You've got a guy, Keenan Reynolds at Navy, who you've written about here in this offseason. You've talked to some of the greatest that have ever put a golden helmet on and gotten their evaluation of Keenan Reynolds. And then you look down Route 50 out to the Beltway, and a guy like Perry Hills, who was probably thought to be the 3rd guy when camp opened up at Maryland Bill, and yet here he has worked his way to the number 1 spot for the Terps as they get set to play Richmond in their opener on September the 5th. Interesting to see the paths of these 2 quarterbacks and how they're going to play for their teams, but clearly, if he stays healthy, Keenan Reynolds has a chance to really just put an all-out assault on almost every Navy quarterback and almost all Navy every rushing record, touchdown record. He's 14 away from breaking the college touchdown record held by basically the whole list is running backs except for Keenan. And it's just amazing to see what he has been able to do since that fall day in Colorado Springs where Ken Niumatalolo called his number. He rallied the Mids to victory, and the fortunes of the program have been different ever since.
Well, no, what I want to do this year is really soak it in, because sometimes when we're here covering it, and we think, hey, it's just Keenan Reynolds, who's the current quarterback of Navy. And as a sports writer, I want to step back and realize I'm seeing one of the greatest players that's ever played at Navy. And you got to remember that and absorb it and appreciate it. And that's what I want to do this year, because I know if I had been covering Staubach back in the day, or Chris McCoy back in the day, or Napoleon McCallum, you look back years later and go, wow, that was one special talent that I had the opportunity to cover and observe. And Keenan is going to do great things. And talking to Ken Niumatalolo, the head coach, Ivan Jasper, the offensive coordinator, E.K. Binns, starting guard, all of them want Keenan to get this rushing record, because it means so much to the program. To be able to say that a guy from Navy is at the very top of an amazing record. I mean, we were talking about scoring the most touchdowns in the history of college football. That's really saying something. And I think everyone at Navy would love to see him get that record. And Napoleon McCallum, I didn't think that his career rushing record would ever be touched in this era. But Keenan has a chance. If he rushes for 1,000 yards this year, he's going to move past Napoleon McCallum as the all-time leading rusher at Navy. That's amazing. And then you speak to his versatility. He's not just a running quarterback. The career touchdown passing record, Bill Byrne, the now Admiral Bill Byrne, former commandant of midshipmen at Navy, holds the career record of touchdown passes at Navy, 29. Keenan has a chance to surpass that. It's amazing.
And obviously, you and I get to talk to him on a completely different level. I mean, the young man is what.
First class.
That's the thing that when you talk to Keenan Reynolds, I mean, first to deflect the credit to his coaches and teammates. Team goals are always first. All he's worried about right now is beating Colgate in week 1 and getting that Commander-in-Chief's trophy back during the course of the year. And I think that's the one thing that has always been, and obviously we've had a lot of national media talk to him now that the Mids have moved into the American, which is another element to their play this year. And it's interesting to see the consistency in his answers. Every one of them, it's Commander-in-Chief's trophy, Commander-in-Chief's trophy. That locker room is hungry to get that goal accomplished this year. Obviously, they've got some games between now and October the 3rd, but if you want to see a good football game, you come to Annapolis October 3rd when Navy and Air Force play. You will not find two teams that probably dislike each other more, who compete harder and in the interest of fair play than Navy and Air Force do on a Saturday afternoon. That game means as much to anybody as any game in college football all year long. For Maryland, Perry Hills outduels Dax Garman, now Garman might be the 3. Rowe could be the 2. Garman, of course, a guy that has as much experience as any of them because he played some at Oklahoma State. But what a job by Perry Hills to advance himself up the board. And Randy Edsall, who got the Terps into a bowl game in year 1 in the Big Ten, has to now answer that. Their biggest part of the schedule, to me, those back-to-back weeks, those first 2 weeks in October. Ironically, when Navy's playing Air Force and Notre Dame, Maryland's playing Michigan at home and then going to Ohio State. Yeah. How about those back-to-back weeks on the Big Ten schedule for the Terps?
Well, first of all, I like Randy Edsall, head coach of Maryland. He always says it's a competition, it's an open competition. And
yes. And if you win it, you win it.
Well, sometimes when a coach says that, they're like,
lip service.
They got a guy that they really want to be the starter. This case, he gave him all reps with the first unit, and Perry Hills emerged. And he's kind of been forgotten about because he sat out last year as a redshirt due to an injury. He had started some games for Maryland. The one year that Maryland went through like 5 quarterbacks, he was one of them. Started a game, won a game at Temple that I remember very distinctly. So the he's a tough kid, Pennsylvania kid. And he's got that gritty mentality, and good on him for winning the job. And the interesting thing at Maryland is that they've gone through a litany of wide receivers. It's interesting to see what weapons he has on the perimeter, but he's got some good running backs: Brandon Ross, Wes Brown. I think he's got some talent behind him that he can hand the ball to. But big year for Maryland going in second. I think Maryland was better last year in the Big Ten in their debut than people thought. Won some games, but they beat a Penn State team that was down, beat a Michigan team that was down. Now this is year 2. Is Maryland going to be a middling program in the Big Ten? Are they going to slip down to the lower level, or can they move up? I don't know. It's going to be very interesting.
I think the big question, clearly,
are they going to be able to run the ball up front? But more importantly, are they going to be able to keep people from running it right down their gullet. I mean, already lost a linebacker for the year to injury, will likely certainly a playmaker in the secondary, but if teams don't have to throw the ball against you, your best playmaker doesn't necessarily get those chances to make plays. So I think, to me, that's the biggest thing. If teams are able to run it down Maryland's gullet the entire game, then they're not going to win as many games.
And that's what the coaching staff realized in their first year of the Big Ten football. They realized this is a lineman-dominated league. It is a smash-mouth league. And the first thing they did is they changed their defense from a 3-4 to a 4-3, so you get more guys up front, try to get some size up front so you can win the battle in the trenches, because in the Big Ten, that is where ball games are won.
All right, like our page on Facebook and all kinds of great stuff on social media. You never know, we might even come up with a Twitter page this year as well to tweet about the top games of the week, as each week in both youth and college and high school and pro all go by. We'll be talking about them all year long right here on the Gridiron Review. Our thanks to Bob Hook for joining us early. Our thanks to you for watching as always. For Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. We'll see you next week on the Gridiron Review.